Hi, everyone. This is Rico Figliolini, host of Peachtree Corners Life. And this year, this month, today, we're doing an interview with an artist that's going to be at the Wesleyan Artist Market, Meagan Brooker. So let's say hi to Meagan. Hey, Meagan. Thanks for,
Hello.
thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
So we're
Pleasure
going to
to
be
be here.
talking. Thank you for being with us. Before we actually get into all of this, I just want to say thank you to our sponsor, EV Remodeling Inc. They do a great job when it comes to remodeling, design and build, start from scratch up. Eli, him and his family live here in Peachtree Corners, does a great job. Lots of people know them. Anything from your bathrooms and kitchens to your whole house almost. So check them out at evremodelinginc.com. We appreciate the support of these podcasts and our magazines. So now let's get right into it because we've done this. I just did this interview a few weeks ago with two student artists that are going to be featured at the Wesleyan Artist Market. Their stream is actually going to happen Wednesday for
Oh,
Megan and
great.
I to know. You all that are listening won't know which Wednesday that is, but it's going to be on a Wednesday. Um, Actually, before we go to press with the next issue of Peachtree Corners magazine, which has three profiles, including Megan, of the Wesleyan artists. Three of the artists that are going to be there. Um, so this is a complement to that. We're going to be talking a bit about art and what inspires Megan. So let's get right into it. Megan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe how you started at Wesleyan?
Yeah, so I teach at Wesleyan School. I teach high school art. I teach right now all levels of 2D and AP photography, and I've been there for 17 years, which makes me feel very old. Uh, I
You're not though. You look fine.
Thank you. I went to University of Georgia and went after getting my degree in undergrad of art education. I taught elementary art in Gwinnett County for 2 years.
Right.
Elementary art in Gwinnett County for 2 years, and I then I did missions work for a year actually, and was looking for a high school job because I thought the idea of the challenge of high school would be really
Right.
um, interesting.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I just love my job and I love Wesley, and I'm very grateful to be there because obviously I've been there for 17 years, so they can't get rid of me
Yes, it's a
now.
great school. Wesleyan School is in the city of Peachtree Corners, and they do a fantastic job. And they're growing. I mean, they're in the middle of actually a building project right now for their STEM building. So lots going on at Wesleyan. This is just one facet of what they do. Um, so you've been there
Yes,
17 years, and you're teaching high school students, I believe, the upper level class, upper school.
yes.
In particular, what are you teaching at this point? What the subject or mediums are you working in?
So currently I'm teaching all levels of 2D art. So drawing, painting, mixed media, anything that's 2D. And so from foundations all the way up to AP, the AP level, which is kind of
Okay,
college credit courses.
right.
And then that includes AP photography. Previously I taught photography, and way back in the day I used to teach 3D as well.
Y-
But I love now that I get to specialize in 2D, and then we have
Right.
amazing teachers who teach focus on photography and focus on 3D. So we have a great team here
Excellent.
now.
Cool. So when well, let me ask you something, because as we grow up, as we're young, and we're getting into school, and we're in elementary and middle school, we start discovering ourselves a little bit, right? We start discovering what we like, what we don't like, and stuff. Of course, people around us, including parents, may sometimes tell us what we should like and we shouldn't like, or what we should become. I know that you were inspired early on that to be an artist, to go down that route. Well, maybe not to be an artist, but to go down the route of the arts versus the science. So tell us what inspired you. At which point did you decide you wanted to be creative versus being, let's say, a doctor or something?
Yeah. Well, that's interesting actually. I I just would I tell all my students, like, follow your innate gut and what fulfills you. Like what
Right.
and you stirs you up and makes you want to do more. I from a very young age was always wanting to paint, create, take classes, paint my ceiling in my bedroom, even though my mom wouldn't let me. Um, I paint furniture. I was always wanting to create or like create my own space or do something creative. I had a very fast working creative brain, and I came from a small county up in North Georgia, and there weren't many opportunities in the arts. So in high school, I had a great art teacher who was the first one who looked at my work and said, you're really talented. And I was like, whoa, so I got that encouragement and that fed in, which made me want to work harder. It made me want to do more and try more and get better. So I actually went to college and started in pre-med because
Did you?
I had good grades and was smart, and my family was like, "You listen, go make some money. Don't become a teacher.
Mhm.
You don't make any money."
Yeah, not good money there.
Yeah, no. So
Mm,
I started off in pre-med and I just was bored to tears, and it was not life-giving.
mm,
Anyway, so I decided to switch to art and have never looked back ever since then. My family sometimes wishes I might have, but they see how life-giving it is for me now and how
right.
innate it is and how much I'm able to do with the creativity. So it's come around.
So you've never really looked back and said, maybe I should put my brushes away and do something else.
No, it's too natural.
Okay.
I have too much of the creative bent and too much to to put out there to stop. I'm not really that great at
Okay.
anything else either. I have too much fun with it to stop
Right.
now.
Right. Okay. And I can appreciate that. My parents wanted me to be an accountant. I just hated numbers, could never do that, and just not for me. My brain didn't work on that side for that.
Yeah.
Um, right. So, but teaching art, this is one of the things I learned from my youngest, right? He says to me, I asked him, I said, what do you want to be? He says, I'd love to be a writer. I want to write. I want to write novels and stuff. So he's creative. But he doesn't want a job that he has to write a lot during the day because then it's just all his creativity is gone by the end of the day. So how do you work that? How do you balance? It's a life balance, right? Work life. How do you balance that creativity with the work that you do all day long with other kids? How do you do that?
That's honestly that is probably the toughest part of my job. And I have two young boys, so that to complicate the
How old are the
expenditure
kids?
of resources.
How old
12,
how old are you?
one's 12, he's in fifth grade, and
Okay.
one is 8. And
Okay.
they go to Wesleyan with me, which is also a huge blessing.
Cool.
Um, I, you know, when I started off in art education and I
Mhm.
got into the courses and started doing the practicum teaching, I loved being able to impart the knowledge of like creativity and the natural working of all of the brain work that working with your hands does in every
Yeah.
way. And it's not about teaching like methodology to me as much as it is like pulling out this natural
Mm.
creativity. And it I was always fascinated with art therapy. I considered studying that, but I think art is very much a natural therapy.
Yeah.
Um, and there's so many studies about how when we're working with our hands,
Hmm.
how our brains calm down, they can think better, they're clearly. So even just a
Yeah.
30-minute break in the middle of the day or an hour break to work with your hands and not have to use a different part of your brain is
Yeah.
so good for anybody.
I,
You think about how it works with 4-year-olds, it's the same with 80-year-olds, you
mm,
know. So and seeing being able to use my creativity during the day, it is exhausting because I feel like, at being asked 20 questions every 5 minutes, I do come home depleted. Um,
I would think.
and but I at night when the boys go down, when I can, I will go down and just let it all out on canvas. I will say currently my work is not the most conceptual. It's more reactive, but it's kind
Mm.
of more guttural and things it's emotional
Hmm.
in a way of things that I'm reacting to in my current life. And I feel like most artists do that. It's like where you are, your work
Right.
is breathing out of where you are at the
That
moment.
I think that makes sense, right? Because inspiration is in the moment when you're doing these
Right,
things. It's not like most artists plan these things out sometimes. You may have in your head, but you're working in the medium you're working in. It could appear different, and you're
right.
trying to rough it and do different piece from it. When you are like that, when you have to be in your space, if you will. I know writers, for example, will write with the door closed, if you will. And they know that pages and chapters will go away at some point because they're just getting into that space. Do you find yourself doing that with art? Do you find, how's the process? Do you sketch first and then go to the medium that you choose for it, in the paper or the surface that you want to put it on? How do you do that part?
That's a really good question. I love sketching and planning. I in my current stage just don't have that much time, so
Hmm.
I tend to work out my process as part of the process
Okay.
and build up my layers and build it up until it's a complete being. Um, so the art is very much a process as opposed to being a super planned, which is my personality anyway, more free spirited by nature.
Okay.
Um, and so sometimes I will write verses or quotes or things that are on my mind kind of
Hmm.
in the canvas as I'm going as a meditation. And then I'll build the color, texture, and design up as part of that meditation of whatever is on my heart at the time. The art will kind of come out of that longing or prayer or what moment that I'm having there. Um, I actually do I do small ones
Yeah.
that are I call them little loves, but they're all based off of an attribute or a thought like prayer, contentment, love, that they're kind of prayed over in a way.
Okay. All right. I put one. I know there's one behind you, but I put one
Mhm.
of your pieces on the feed right now. Um, Tell us a little bit about that one.
This one, so I have, if I had a gallery show, which I hope to one day, I would call it something like an affinity for winged things. I've always had loved angels. I love birds, butterflies. There's something about them that represents such hope and freedom.
Hmm.
Um, and so the past few years, I've done quite a few butterflies. And so the one on the screen here, I love the color tone in it. But I recently started adding in kind of a duotone background with the gold and white that
Okay.
almost represents a duality of, it kind of brings in a contrast of emotion, if you will.
I, I see two different color spaces, a border, a ragged border. Same way with I see this, right? This is
Mhm.
another piece that you've done. Um, Same type of ridging, same type of look. Duality, two different worlds, two places. What do you, what were you doing here in this one?
Yeah, it's similar to this one here
Yeah.
behind me.
Right.
I I feel like there's always a tension uh, in our humanity of light and dark, right? There's a tension where we're pulled between right and wrong, light
Mm,
and dark, hope
right.
um, and failure, or anything that could pull us down easily if we don't pull toward the light. So
Hmm.
when combining these hopeful creatures like birds and butterflies
Right.
with that tension, to me it's this representative of choosing the hope, choosing freedom, choosing to do what you can do to move yourself to a higher purpose and to truth and to light and to
Okay.
all the things that God offers us in this life. So it's just kind of representing like, yes, sometimes life's really hard, but there is hope.
Let's go to something a little different that you shared with us. This one. So it's a bit different than the other two, right?
Yeah.
Um, can you tell us a little bit about this one?
Yeah, this one was inspired by actually Tuscany, and the
Yeah,
green hills of Tuscany. I
nice.
love traveling. I love Italy, especially has my heart. I'm actually taking a group of the high schoolers to France this summer, and I've
Wow.
not been to this part of France, so I'm excited about that. But I often will recreate images or how certain landscapes of pictures that I take when I'm traveling,
Hmm.
not all overseas, some here, and recreate them. And so this is kind of representing loosely the villas that you'll see dotted all over the landscape of
Right.
Tuscany, and Tuscany is dotted with farmland everywhere, and these are just hilly
Sure.
wineries and
Hmm.
orchards. So that's
So
what that
this was done in acrylic, right?
correct.
And you chose that over. Do you work mostly in acrylic now, or do you
I do.
work in? Okay.
I love
It,
oil. I love
uh-huh.
watercolor. I love mixed media. For artist market, I choose to do acrylic in the same vein. And I hope that you don't hear this as an excuse, as more it's just a stage of life where it's quicker. The acrylic, I'm
Mm,
able to move quickly and work quicker and layer in it and get the
right.
effect, because I don't necessarily have time to sit and make 30 oils in this stage of life. So
Right.
acrylic offers me the ability to work a little quicker in it.
Okay. And this particular piece, I mean, they're all relatively big pieces too, right? Like 30 by 30 or something along those lines.
That one's huge. That one is, I believe it was 40 by 60. It's about the size of this one
Really?
behind me.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Okay.
and a friend bought it for their piano room in their house, so it looks really good on that big wall.
Nice, nice. When people do buy your stuff, do you recommend certain framings for your pictures, or you let them do their own thing?
Usually, they have something in mind for that fits their aesthetic, but I
Right.
love float frames personally. I
Okay.
think float frames look so good, and they
So when people buy your paintings like this, I've asked this of other artists, how do you feel about it? You've done it. It's not like it's the 30th piece that you've done of the same exact thing. So you've spent your time doing it and it's leaving you. It's almost like a baby. It's going
right.
away. It's going to be in someone's house. Um, how do you feel about that?
There's this new series with the duality of some of my
Hmm.
favorite new ones, and to see one of my favorite parts of doing work for clients, for when people are choosing work like at artist markets as opposed to galleries or collecteds and stuff like that, is seeing people's reaction to it and why they choose it. That is such a
Mm,
precious moment, because I think every artist, or most artists at least, pour so much of themselves into it.
yeah.
And to your point, some of them have trouble letting go of them because they become precious. But when they stop in their tracks and have a visceral moment of like, oh, my mom just died and she loves birds and that's her favorite color,
Oh,
and they'll just
wow.
start crying, or
Wow.
oh my goodness, there are tactile things that they will hold on to that become meaning to them, that may not
Mm,
be the meaning I assign to it, but it doesn't matter. That's what the beauty of art is: the expression of the color, the movement, the
right.
feeling, and the hope that people will hold on to.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I can't imagine that feeling. I'm not an artist, so I can't imagine that. I'm a graphic designer, but not an artist. So I don't know how that feels. I do know how it feels to put together a magazine and send it to the printer and then have it come back in a pallet of like 10,000 copies or something. I know how that feels, but
Oh
that's
yeah,
about it.
that's that's a relief, is what that's called.
Yes. Yes. In fact, I have two deadlines this week, so it's going to be a
Oh,
relief when this week is done. But
busy week.
yeah, yeah, it's just one of those crazy weeks, actually.
Mhm.
Um, so, we talked about keeping fresh and continuing to evolve. Well, actually, we didn't talk about evolving as an artist. You touched upon it a little bit, but how do you do travel, you do find, like you said, Tuscany was a great, beautiful landscape to be inspired by. Look, you can't go wrong with Tuscany, right? Um, Do you find inspirations in some of the simpler things in life or places that you didn't even think inspiration would come from or moments? Does any of that happen sometimes?
Yeah, sometimes like I think back to COVID, and we were so limited. And I'm a mover and a shaker. I don't sit still well, to a fault. Um, and so having to sit still kind of shook me.
Okay.
But I found myself grabbing my camera and going out in the beautiful spring light and catching these abstracted flowers that were blooming across the street, and the way that the light
Yeah.
hit them, or like noticing trees in our yard that were blooming and I hadn't noticed how beautiful they were at the time. Things that I hadn't stopped long
Right.
enough to appreciate. And of course, the beauty of my children and their just innocence at their ages.
Right.
Um, and so just taking time to stop, that makes me want to highlight the beauty of
Mm.
life as opposed to the hardship. Because anytime we can have a moment, and if my art is a moment,
Mm-hmm.
to stop and be like, okay, let me just take a beat and
Mm-hmm.
find some hope and find a little moment of truth and hope in our day.
Okay. COVID was an interesting period, right? It was a
Hmm.
bad time for many families, but it was also, in some ways, a good moment in time because things stopped. We were forced to stop what we were doing. So it was so bad at one point that, if you remember the supply chain issues, ships stopped delivering.
Right.
Um, and in fact, the sea woke up more, the creatures in the sea, the whales. Things were happening. Air was a little cleaner. It was just different time, right? So I can see
Right.
that, quiet, but you're basically forced into doing things that we weren't. We was forced to stop
Hmm.
doing what we're doing. So inspiration, I guess, can be found in many places.
Yeah.
Um, you're teaching lots of kids through the years, 17 years of teaching at Wesleyan. Um, I'm sure there's been talented, very talented kids across that time frame. Um, is there any story, inspirational time, particular student or group of students or class that you felt was a moment that you want to remember? Maybe that inspired you. Maybe that inspired other kids. Maybe there was something going on at that moment, or
Yeah.
maybe even creativity out of students that you didn't think would be creative, because maybe art wasn't their thing. So,
Well, for one thing that it's just because we came out of the conversation of just talking about COVID is how important art was to the ones who had it during that
mm,
time. Teaching hybrid was the hardest thing I've ever done. And when we were like on camera and trying to teach art from home and
right,
all of that. But I have multiple stories of students who art was their lifeline at the time,
wow,
because home, whether home was not safe for them, or whether they just needed to be out and be social, or whatever it was, art was their way of their identity, of
mm,
finding some way of expression that pulled them out of the anxiety, the mire, the scariness, the loneliness of the time, in a way to express themselves and kind of think outside of themselves when you're
yeah,
so glued to your phone or your
yeah,
computer trying
right,
to do a thing. Art pulled them back out. So that was a beautiful thing and a testament to the purpose, I think, of art education. Um, and I think what comes to mind, and I'll shout out to my current AP art class, who are just, they're so much fun. And we're actually having our art show next week. So I'm excited about that. And they're so creative. But I think that in this culture of, again, what we're seeing post COVID is a lot more anxiety, a lot more
yeah,
pressure, a lot more peer pressure. The social media is out of control,
hmm,
um, and culture has a lot of expectations. And I think that what is beautiful is seeing the kids respond to these pressures and
Right.
through their art and subverting them with truth and with showing their own personality and identity in a way that they wouldn't in social media, right? So their truth, their own personality and their truth is coming out. So they're becoming more confident through their expression of art in a way that they wouldn't without it, right? And so it's like, oh, I
Right.
am good at something, you know?
Right. No, I get where you're going. And you're right.
Yeah.
I could see that. But I can also see social media is good and bad, right? Instagram, TikTok. I mean, there's different various levels. If you allow yourself to scroll for 30 minutes, you're losing a bit of your life, maybe. But there are artists out there that actually share online also, and they use that medium to be able to share their art, whether
Oh,
it's
right.
right, whether it's ceramics they're doing, or whether it's actually watching them create something in the moment.
Yeah.
Because that's TikTok. I mean, does that, right? Instagram to a lesser degree, I think. But you could be watching an artist, a street artist, or just an artist in a studio painting, sketching, the whole process for hours, for an hour or two, which is kind of interesting, right? Because you get
Mhm.
to see the creative process. Most people don't see that. They see the finished piece. They
Right.
don't know what Megan took to make that piece, or
Right.
what Bree Hill, who was one of the students I interviewed, what it took her to make a painting, and what she invested in that painting. Or Esther Cooper, who's the other student I interviewed, who does creative pastries, right?
Yeah.
That's a whole different thing. That doesn't. There's no longevity to that. It expires at some point. You either eat it or it goes bad. But in the moment, it's a good looking piece, maybe, right? Talking about 3D art, there's more than that, right? The scent of it and stuff. Um, so I can see how social media can be helpful in some ways with some students and people.
Totally.
No, yeah.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think it's like it's with social media, we have so much at our fingertips now. We can appreciate art in a whole new way because you, like you said, you can see the process, you can understand it more, but it also makes you want to try more.
yes,
Um,
yes,
and
for sure.
there's always going to be cynics. There are always going to be people who don't, who will try to poke a hole in it. But
Mhm.
for I think we will be students until we die. I think that's part of the
Yes,
creative part of teaching. Like we always
yeah,
have more to learn, and
yeah,
so that's what's so fun about social media, is being able to go on and try something new or to see new work because we're to be inspired by something outside of us, which broadens our perspective
right,
and opens our worldview a little bit.
yeah, yeah. Now, just to stick with technology a little bit, because there are students that use um, Photoshop, um, Procreate, other digital products and software, where you can create online in layers, brushes. We create your own brush palette, if you will. Um, do you do you delve into any of that? Do you see students using that as part of the process of what they're doing? I mean, are they using it even to pre-plan a physical, tactile piece of art,
Yeah,
uh, or as the
they really
final piece?
it's such a big question right now in the art
Yeah.
world. And my coworker, Drew Phillips, has actually done a lot of research and given some talks on this. I currently do not teach any AI in what I am teaching.
Okay.
Um, but I see the value of, well, also, I will say there's inherent AI almost in everything now. Like in my AP photography and Photoshop, um,
Oh yeah.
they
Yeah.
there's always the option of generative fill, but AP doesn't allow any type of AI.
Hmm.
But I think the use of it for references, So speaking of
Right.
Bree Hill, she's one of my students. She's amazing.
Oh,
She just
okay.
did this portrait with a girl being lifted up by doves with a sheet and ropes. Okay, so that's
Yes.
hard to
Yes.
take a
We showed
picture
that.
of.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
did okay. She just finished it yesterday, and it's stunning. So
Cool.
maybe we can do a recap and show the
Uh-huh.
finished piece. Not yesterday, today, but it's hard to take a reference picture for that to get her full concept in there.
Mm.
And so what we made it happen, but you could put that kind of prompt into AI and have it kind of create a reference for you, but then you are drawing it.
Right.
So
Right.
there's a lot of debate about that, and the crossover of what's allowed and everything. But and
Right.
there's a lot of people who think that AI is going to take over a lot of jobs. But I'll tell you, and this is coming from conversations with people who are working with Microsoft AI, creatives will never be out of a job, because AI needs creatives to be able to create the prompts to do the job. And so
Yes.
the people who can think outside of the box and creatives are, there will always be a place for us,
Yes. It's yeah. And there's so many forms of AI too, right? There's language-based, generative. There's very various levels of AI.
Right.
So you're right though, because you need to be able to. I've played in it a little bit, as far as writing and stuff like that, and even Dolly and some of the visual elements, and even a different form of Sora, which is more video based, right?
Hmm.
Um, and it's not everything that make people make it out to be. It takes the process of doing it, almost like you said. In some ways, you have to be an artist to be able to pull out from that
Right.
anything artistic that makes sense. Um, yeah, so it's not as easy as people think. It's like I get that question sometimes. Can't you just do this in Photoshop? AI's in there. It's like, no, you can't just do that. You have to really think about what you're doing here. It's never going to look like what you could go into AI and you could go chat GPT and Dolly and tell it what you want and say, good, close. You got to where I need it. Now add this and this, but don't remove that. And it'll give you something completely different. So I
Right.
know the prompts might be you have to work the prompts the right way and stuff, but yeah, AI is a good tool to derive inspiration from, I think. I agree with you there. You're going to
Yeah.
need creative people still. But I'm sure that's still within the next 5 years, that's probably will be part of being taught in the creative process, right? How to
I think
use
so.
AI as a intern or apprentice, if you will, for yourself
Right.
in some ways. Um, so you're going to be at the Wesleyan Artist Market. You're going to be showcasing some of your work. I'm assuming some of the work that we showed may be there. Will you have, what type of work will you be actually showing at the show?
Yeah, I'm doing some more of the, like what we were talking about with the
Mhm.
duality, and kind of playing around with that more, trying out some new subjects and content, but mostly um, that. But I want to try out some landscapes and build in
Okay.
some more looser sunset sunrises, along with the birds and butterflies, and see what I can
Okay.
turn out there.
Cool. Anything you want to share with us that we haven't touched base on?
No, I really, if you haven't been out to the artist market, I highly
No,
recommend
no.
it. Yeah, it's really okay. Again, I've been at Wesleyan for 17 years, and I've
Mhm.
been displaying at the artist market for 17 years. And
Oh, wow.
believe me, I've grown a lot. I would be embarrassed to show you what I saw the first few years. I think my first year was actually, I taught ceramics, and so I did some ceramics. Um, but I've grown a lot.
Okay.
And but I am just, it's the funds of the market come back to the students, so
Mm.
it funds the fine arts,
Right.
so the marching band, the visual arts, the theater, and so it comes back to the students there at Wesleyan. But beyond that, it is such a high level event put on by volunteers from the school, which
Right.
is almost hard to believe, because it's such a um, professional looking event.
Hmm.
And it's indoors. It's one of my favorite things that we do throughout the year. And I'm so grateful for those who put it on. So come out to see us. It's a really fun event for the family.
It's going to be April 26th through the 27th, so that Friday, Saturday. And if you want to find out about it, it's Wesleyan Artist Market. Just Google that, and it'll show right up. Um, do you want to leave a last maybe word for any aspiring artists or educators? Anything you want to leave advice for them before we end the show?
Yeah, I think if you feel like the need to create, or whether that be writing, singing, writing out songs. It doesn't matter if you're good at it. The act of creating is fulfilling, and there's a reason that you are stirred to do it. And I think personally, I think that's God working in you to bring you to a higher light and a higher purpose. And so I just do your thing. It doesn't matter what everybody else thinks, as long as it's for you and for him or for whoever else you want to see it. Just let your light shine.
Cool. We've been talking to Meagan Brooker. She's a 17-year veteran teacher at Wesleyan School, teaching high school kids about art. And she's going to be showing at the Wesleyan Artist Market. So stay with me for a second, Meagan. I want to just say thank you to our sponsor, EV Remodeling Inc. Does a great job, design, build, home remodeling, kitchen, bathrooms, everywhere that you can think of. Eli and his family live here in Peachtree Corners. They're just wonderful people. You should check them out. EVRemodelingInc.com. So check those out.